well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Welcome to another edition of Bearing Arms, Cam and Company. My name is Cam Edwards. Glad you're with me on the program today. You are my company today. Had a guest fall through at the last minute. I hate it when that happens, but that's all right. We'll try to get them back in the near future. I want to talk today about, I wrote a piece for Bearing Arms on Monday afternoon, our VIP piece, about what the gun control lobby strategy is likely to be if the Supreme Court, as expected, says, no, you can't ban assault weapons, quote unquote. We've already seen the Supreme Court, obviously, in Heller say you can't ban handguns. I think it is extremely likely that the Supreme Court is going to say, no, you can't ban long guns either. So what's a gun control lobby to do if gun bans are taken off the table? Well, I think we're already starting to see some of their post-Viramonte strategy at work. And I think they've actually been laying the groundwork for this for quite some time. In Colorado, you've got the permit to purchase scheme that went into effect on August the 1st. This permit to purchase applies specifically for, they don't call them assault weapons in Colorado. It's a very weird term, and I can't remember what it is right now. But essentially, in order to purchase one of these regulated arms, you have to get a certificate from your county sheriff. And once you get your certificate of eligibility, then you can go take a training course. Normally it's the other way around, right? Normally you provide proof of training to law enforcement. They say, oh, okay, we're going to run the background check. Here's your permit. No, Colorado's doing it backwards. So you go, you get your certificate from the sheriff. Then you can go take your training. And then you take that to the gun store, your proof of training and your certificate, take it to the gun store, and then you can purchase your firearm, subject to Colorado's waiting period, which, by the way, oral arguments in a lawsuit challenging that waiting period held yesterday in, I think this was the district court, not the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals. So that's one avenue where the gun control lobby, I think, is likely to act. If gun bans are taken away, fine, you got to have a permit in order to acquire these firearms. We're starting to see more and more states, blue states, introduce these measures. Virginia actually had a permit to purchase bill. It was one of the gun control bills that did not make it to Governor Abigail Spanberger's desk this session. I think they're saving it for next year. But in California, where you already have to have what's called a firearm safety certificate in order to purchase or acquire a firearm, there's a bill that would modify that process and actually turn it into a permit to purchase. This is SB 948. It passed out of the California Assembly yesterday. Now, this is SB 948. So this originated in the Senate, cleared the Senate, went over to the Assembly, passed out of the Assembly yesterday. It went back to the Senate for a concurrence vote because the Assembly made some minor modifications. And if the Senate approves with those changes, then the bill goes to Governor Gavin Newsom. This is the last full week of the legislature in Sacramento for the 2026 session. And this bill is unfortunately on the move. SB 948, if it is signed by Governor Gavin Newsom, would require, starting January 1st, 2029, anybody who wants to purchase or acquire a firearm, even as a gift, even as a gift from a family member, you've got to have that firearm safety certificate. And starting January 1, 2029, you would have to show that you've taken a 4-hour training course, complete with live fire training, as well as a written test. There already is a written test component to the firearm safety certificate. You think you're going to get 75%. It's a multiple choice, true or false test. Pretty darn easy to pass, quite honestly. More of a formality. But Cal DOJ is going to be responsible for maybe devising a new test. They'll be responsible for setting up the parameters for your live fire test because you're supposed to demonstrate proficiency with a firearm. So what is proficient in the eyes of Cal DOJ? We don't know. But you would have to have, again, that 4-hour training course, including live fire, or a valid concealed carry license. You'd be exempt if you have a CCW, you'd be exempt, or a CHL, I guess, California Concealed Handgun License. If you have a concealed handgun license, then you would be exempt from the firearm safety certificate. But if you don't, you got to have that firearm safety certificate in order to purchase or acquire a firearm. And the process of getting that certificate is likely about to get a lot more onerous. I suspect that the Senate will concur with the changes made by the Assembly on Monday, that this bill will go to Governor Gavin Newsom and it will be signed into law. And again, this makes it more difficult to exercise our right to keep and bear arms. It adds an additional expense, right? We don't know how much firearm trainers will charge for this 4-hour course. Right now, concealed carry courses in California typically run $200 to $300, maybe a little bit more than that. So if you're looking at a 4-hour course, probably $75 to $100 at the very least. So you can already add in, let's say, let's be conservative. You can add in $100 to the cost of that firearm. But you're also adding in another state-imposed waiting period. California already has a 10-day waiting period on the books. It is being challenged, but as for now, it stands. It's in effect. How long is it going to take for you to get your firearm safety certificate? Right now, the way things work, you can go to the gun store, and most gun stores will allow you to take the test there. They've got a Cal DOJ certified proctor, basically, who can administer the exam. You take the exam, they grade the exam, you pass, you get your firearm safety certificate, then you can proceed with your purchase. Well, that system just comes to a screeching halt, right? Because now you've got to find a place to take the 4-hour training course, hopefully one with a range, because if not, you're going to have to find a range where you can go take the live fire portion of this training course. And that's not going to be a simple or easy thing. You know, you might be waiting a week to get into a class. You might be waiting a month to get into a class. Depending on where you live in California, you very well might be driving an hour or more to get to the nearest commercial range. So this will be a substantial burden on the ability of Californians to simply possess a firearm in their home. And I think it's blatantly unconstitutional. California will be sued if this becomes law. I mean, there's no doubt about that. They might try to argue, well, this is just a commercial regulation on the sale of firearms. The Supreme Court said way back in Heller that those commercial restrictions are presumptively constitutional, so this is presumptively constitutional. But it doesn't just apply to commercial transactions. As I said, you can get a gun as a gift. You still have to have a firearm safety certificate. So this is broader than just a requirement for a retail sale of a firearm. So I don't think that argument holds up. The Ninth Circuit has said that acquiring a firearm is protected by the Second Amendment, that it is part and parcel of the right to keep and bear arms, because you can't keep or bear if you can't get, right? So that's one bit of good news for the upcoming legal challenge if SB 948 becomes law, because the state of California would then have to justify these restrictions as part of the national tradition and the historical tradition of gun ownership and gun regulation in this country. And I don't think they can do that. They'll likely argue this is no different than a shall issue concealed carry license. And the Supreme Court has already said that those are presumptively constitutional. But this isn't a carry permit. Again, this isn't about bearing arms in public. This is about keeping a gun in your home. So I don't think that that's an appropriate analogy. I think they're going to have to look elsewhere. And again, I don't think there is a historical tradition of requiring people to get a government-issued permission slip or to demonstrate proficiency with a firearm before they can purchase and possess a firearm. I don't think you can find laws like that in 1791. I don't think you can find laws like that in 1868. So I suspect that this is very susceptible to a legal challenge. It might take the Supreme Court to do the right thing, given the politics of the Ninth Circuit at the moment. But, California lawmakers, even if they know that this bill is doomed to fail if it becomes law, chances are they can keep it on the books for a few years. They can force the plaintiffs to spend $1 million or more challenging this in court. And in the meantime, they can impose this chilling effect on our Second Amendment rights. So we'll be watching very closely to see if the Senate does concur with the changes made by the Assembly yesterday. That could happen as early as today. In fact, by the time you watch this, that may have actually happened. But we'll be keeping our eyes on that. Now, on the opposite side of the country, you've got a lawmaker in Pennsylvania who has announced his intent to file a bill the next time lawmakers get together in Harrisburg. And this is another attempt, I believe, to impede the exercise of our Second Amendment rights. We've seen a number of states around the country impose state-level gun dealer licensing laws, right? Illinois did this a couple of years ago. I believe New York has done this as well. In fact, they're trying to put more restrictions in place. Pennsylvania has had this for decades, but it has not been it's not been abusive, right? It's not that difficult to get a state license. It's kind of unclear why you even have a state-issued license for FFLs. It doesn't come with any sort of, inspection regime or anything like that until possibly next year. Because this bill that's been, it hasn't been formally introduced. The lawmaker, I believe his name is Chris Rabb. He's a Democrat from Philadelphia. He's a state rep. He filed basically a memorandum with the House saying, hey, I intend to file this bill. So we don't have the text. We don't have a bill number. Essentially what we have is the representative's description of what this bill would do. And according to Representative Rabb, the bill seeks to reduce gun violence in 3 ways. First, he says it would require the Pennsylvania State Police or their designees to conduct annual inspections of federally licensed firearm dealers. Second, it would codify a duty to report lost or stolen firearms or ammunition. Third, it would establish 2 programs, he says. One, to provide grants to federally licensed firearms dealers to modernize their operations, whatever that means, and another to fund the Pennsylvania State Police-led recruitment, training, and oversight of designees, again that term, who verify that the dealers properly store and secure their firearm sales records consistent with federal law. He went on to say it bears emphasizing the more we empower law enforcement and their designees to inspect gun dealers, the safer we make our streets for everyone, including the officers tasked to protect and serve. He adds that data collected through this process can help identify which of the state's firearms dealers account for a disproportionate share of handgun sales later linked to homicides. And he said that the legislation would also authorize random inspections of dealers fitting that sales profile and would treat firearms held on consignment as inventory. So, on the surface, just a cursory look at Representative Rabb's description of this raises some pretty serious issues here, right? Let's start with the way that the representative would identify these, bad apple dealers, right? The dealers that account for a disproportionate share of handgun sales later linked to homicides. There are, according to Representative Rabb, about 3,000 FFLs in the state of Pennsylvania. Most recent homicide data that I have for Pennsylvania goes back to 2023. And there were, I believe, 693 gun-involved homicides throughout the state. So it could be that if you sold 2 guns that were linked to a homicide, that's a disproportionate number, right? So we don't know what's that level, right? When does the number of guns traced to homicides become disproportionate? What about the length of time between the original sale and when that gun was traced back to a homicide? Is it, a certain number of guns over a certain period of time? Is it a certain number of guns within a 12-month period? 5 years, 10 years, open-ended? We don't know, as Representative Evans said. And then there's the fact that not every gun that's used in a homicide gets traced, right? Police have to recover that firearm. In many cases, that won't happen. So what do you do then? You're looking at, a few hundred homicides at most that involve firearms. And then again, out of that universe, not every gun is going to be recovered. Not every gun is going to be subject to a trace. So how do you ensure that those dealers who are identified as having a disproportionate number of sales really do have a disproportionate number of sales? This is not a scientific way of determining that. This is an art, right? This is a very subjective way of doing this. Then there's the language about the designees of the state police. Who are those going to be? We don't know. Again, Representative Rabb says that his legislation would establish a fund for the Pennsylvania State Police to recruit, train, and provide oversight of designees. So will these be state police employees tasked with just going around and inspecting gun shops? Will this be farmed out to local law enforcement who undergo particular training? Governor Josh Shapiro in Pennsylvania, he established the Office of Gun Violence Prevention. Will it be the governor's staff, members of that gun control office that'll be going around inspecting gun dealers? Again, we don't know because we don't have the text of the legislation in front of us. And then what happens if the inspections supposedly reveal shortcomings? Let's say they show that, all right, this particular FFL, Bob, in Pittsburgh, he is not storing and securing his firearm sales records consistent with federal law. Okay, so what happens to Bob? Does the Pennsylvania State Police then refer this report to the ATF and say, hey, you need to investigate Bob? Or, hey, you need to use this as evidence to go after Bob? I don't think they can do that. What's the punishment? What's the recourse if the state police or their designees find problems? There's nothing in the bill that talks about, revocation of a state license. There's nothing in the bill that talks about really any sort of enforcement measure. Just that the inspections will take place to verify that all of these procedures are being followed. But it seems to me like there's no point in having an inspection system if there's not any sort of compliance mechanism there, right? So I'm wondering what isn't in this bill that Representative Rabb calls the Firearms Dealer Accountability and Modernization Act. And by the way, he is in this memorandum, he's talking about how, gun owners say, Second Amendment advocates say, it's just a matter of enforcing the laws on the books. Well, this is what this is going to be about. I don't think so. I mean, again, if that's what it was, you wouldn't need a law, right? Because the law is already in place. So, no, this is about putting a new law in place, which would seem to require, new tools to punish those gun dealers down in compliance. So I think we're looking at, on two opposite ends of the country, two of the tools that the tools in the gun control lobby will be using to attack our right to keep and bear arms if and when the Supreme Court strikes down bans on so-called assault weapons. They're going to make it harder to purchase. They're going to impose more burdens on the gun buyer. They're going to impose more burdens on the gun owner. Once you possess that firearm, we've got new storage mandates for you. And if you violate those storage mandates, well, then we're coming after you with criminal charges, right? But they're not just going to go after the gun owner. They're going to continue to go after the gun seller. Whether it is state-level licensing laws, whether it is zoning restrictions that are aimed at pushing gun stores onto the fringes of society or a particular city or county. Chicago, I think, is a great example of this. You know, Chicago got sued, I believe, 3 times. Chicago's been sued, maybe at least twice, over their laws regarding gun stores. After the McDonald decision in 2010, Chicago came out with a law, that an ordinance that said no gun stores can operate in the city. And they got sued. And a judge said, yeah, can't do that. So then Chicago went back and said, all right, okay. It's not a total ban. You can open up a gun store, but you just have to do it in the areas of the city that we've zoned for that purpose. And as it turns out, that area was about 1.6% of Chicago's total landmass. And the vast majority of that 1.6% was inaccessible. You couldn't build anything there. The remainder of that 1.6%, I think it was 1.6%, it was less than 2%, I know that. In industrial areas, right? Not zoned for commercial activity. But, you go to this industrial part of town and maybe you can buy a gun there. So the net result is that even though Chicago has not officially banned the opening of gun stores or ranges, there are none in Chicago. Same thing in Washington, D.C. No official ban on the opening of a gun store or a range. And you've actually got at least one FFL who is operating in the district now. But it's essentially by appointment. It's not like a retail store where you can walk in and, check out the selection and then go through the process of buying a gun there. There are no publicly accessible ranges in Washington, D.C. And that, again, is by design, right? It's another barrier to entry for those who want to exercise their Second Amendment rights. You want to own a gun? Cool. You got to own a car because you're going to have to drive to Virginia or Maryland to get one and to go through the train. I mean, I guess you could take Uber or Lyft, but Uber and Lyft don't allow firearms in their vehicles, right? So the net result of whatever the Supreme Court decides in Vermont, and I think they're going to strike down Cook County's ban on so-called assault weapons, as well as the state of Connecticut. I think that's the Lamont case, Grant versus Lamont. The bottom line is the gun control lobby is not going to give up. The gun control lobby exists to ban firearms. And even if the Supreme Court says you can't, they're not going to fold up their tent and go away. We can see this even with the bans on Glocks and other striker-fired pistols right now. They'll continue to try that route until they're told you can't. They will try to expand the makes and models of firearms, the types of firearms that they will try to ban. It won't just be striker-fired. Maybe we can try to ban all semi-automatic firearms. Again, I don't think that's likely to succeed, but they can try it. And they can make it incredibly difficult for a few years for people to buy those firearms. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves because, again, the Supreme Court, we've got the opening brief in Viramontes due on Friday. And we're still several months away from oral arguments. We're even further away from a decision coming down. But the gun control lobby is already thinking about this. They're not going to be caught flat-footed. And I think they know that it is very likely that the Supreme Court is going to rule that these types of bans are unconstitutional. So they already are gaming out their response. And I think it behooves us as Second Amendment advocates to start gaming out what their response might be as well. All right. Let's talk about today's Armed Citizen story, our good deed of the day, and our recidivist report. Actually, before we do that, for just a second, I do want to talk about my modern rugged bag. It is not within arm's reach, so I can't grab it and show it to you, but it recently went with me to North Carolina. It's going to go with me on vacation here in just a few days as well. And from city streets to mountain trails, small town North Carolina, your gear should go wherever life takes you. That's why in modern rugged leather, every bag is handcrafted from premium, responsibly sourced leather. It's designed to look sharp, last long, tell a story all its own. Every stitch, every buckle, every strap reflecting timeless craftsmanship. And it's backed by a lifetime warranty because quality shouldn't quit when the adventure begins. So whether it's the boardroom, the back roads, maybe the Gun Rights Policy Conference in the Dallas-Fort Worth area coming up next month, modern rugged leather helps you carry confidence every step of the way. Modern rugged leather, modern style, timeless durability, backed for life. Life takes you places. Make sure your gear keeps up. Make sure your mouth keeps up, too. You can shop the full collection. They're getting ready to debut some brand new items. Just go to modernrugged.com, enter in your email address, and you will be among the first to know when these new products launch. Again, check it out at modernrugged.com. All right, on to today's Armed Citizen story, our good deed of the day, and our recidivist report. We will start there from Chicago, the website CWB Chicago. Man teamed up with 15-year-old to carjack driver on the northwest side of the city, according to prosecutors. Now, there's nothing in the headline to indicate that this is a recidivist report. You got to read a little bit into a CWB Chicago story. They say a 21-year-old man, 21, with 3 prior felony convictions, is now accused of working with a 15-year-old boy to carjack a man at gunpoint on the northwest side of the city. The victim, also a 21-year-old man from Sterling, Illinois. He was in the 4500 block of North Kenton Avenue about 10 o'clock in the evening of August the 12th. He was there to pick up somebody. When he pulled up, he looked down to text the woman that he was meeting, let her know that he was there. And then he looked back up, and the 15-year-old was standing outside of his car, pointing a handgun at him. The teen allegedly opened the driver's door, grabbed the man by the arm, forced him out of his Volkswagen Jetta while holding the gun to his neck. Prosecutors say the teen then demanded the man's belongings, ordered him to unlock his phone. The man standing there with his hands in the air. And that is when the 21-year-old allegedly got behind the wheel of the car and then drove away. Well, the woman that the guy was planning on picking up stepped outside just in time to see him standing with his hands raised and the 2 hijackers driving away. She called 911 and began relaying the information to police. A short time later, the Jetta was detected by a license plate reader. Cook County Sheriff's Office helicopter officers soon located the vehicle. The air unit followed the car until the driver crashed the vehicle. Yeah. Police then arrested the 21-year-old and the juvenile after they allegedly ran from the crashed vehicle. 21-year-old wearing a ski mask on his head. Officers found a firearm next to the 15-year-old as well. The victim identified the teen in a photo lineup. He wasn't quite as certain about the identity of the 21-year-old because, again, wearing a ski mask. The 21-year-old denied knowing that the vehicle was stolen, saying that this kid picked me up in it. Yeah. But he also told police that he and the teen had been hanging out together since about 6 o'clock that evening. Carjacking occurred about 10 o'clock that evening. So Quentin Williams, who is the 21-year-old in question, has some pretty big discrepancies in his story. He, right now, is being charged with aggravated vehicular hijacking with a firearm. This would be his fourth felony offense, I guess, at age 21. The juvenile, who's not being publicly identified because of his age, also faces the same aggravated vehicular hijacking, as well as aggravated unlawful possession of a weapon. And according to police, the 15-year-old also had an active warrant for his arrest. We don't know for what charge, but they were already looking for him when they found him. Cook County judge did grant the prosecutor's request to hold Quentin Williams pending trial. We'll see how long that lasts. In Cook County, all too often, if you're not immediately released on electronic monitoring, you're held without bond for a few weeks, maybe a few months, and then you get released on electronic monitoring until your trial. And while you're out on electronic monitoring, that counts as you being detained. So if Mr. Williams, for example, doesn't go to trial until next August, and he spends 2 months in the Cook County jail, and then 10 months on electronic monitoring, and then he takes a plea deal, and he's sentenced to 2 years in prison, well, that sentence is basically automatically cut in half to a year under Illinois' criminal justice laws, and then he'll get credit for that year behind bars, so he could walk out of court a free man. Could. Not guaranteeing that that'll happen, but it is a distinct possibility, unfortunately. Today's armed citizen story. This is a weird one. Out of Florida. Man shot by Orange Park homeowner after leading deputies on a chase in a stolen car. Boy, you talk about bad luck. Not only do you steal a car, but then you encounter an armed homeowner as you're trying to get away from police. Clay County Sheriff Michelle Cook said that the incident began around 3 p.m. Monday afternoon when deputies learned about a stolen white Volkswagen. I don't know if it was another Volkswagen Jetta like in Chicago. Anyway, stolen Volkswagen. Deputies found the vehicle, but the driver, identified as 34-year-old William White, then sped off, hitting a patrol car and another vehicle during the pursuit. White eventually stopped, jumped out of the vehicle, along with a 32-year-old woman named Amanda Strickland, allegedly. Deputies were able to detain Strickland, but the sheriff said Cook then ran into a home in a nearby neighborhood. The homeowner and his wife were inside. The homeowner was able to grab his gun when the stranger came into his home, and he shot White in the leg. White suffering non-fatal injuries, taken to the hospital for aid. White, by the way, also had outstanding charges, just like the 15-year-old juvenile in Cook County. White had warrants for grand theft and armed robbery at the time. How about that? So, glad that he's behind bars. Glad the police finally caught up to him. Sucks for the owner of that Volkswagen, whose car got totaled, essentially. Sucks for the homeowner and his wife, who had a stranger burst through their door. But glad that the homeowner, again, able to protect himself and his loved one from somebody who already is accused of a violent crime with a weapon. And finally today, our good deed of the day. In the right place, at the right time, willing and able to do the right thing. A Wisconsin man on a jet ski rescuing a swimmer in need. This was over the weekend in, where in Wisconsin was this? Oak Creek, Wisconsin. Channel 12, WISN in Milwaukee, says that this was Lake Michigan. So not a small pond, You actually got some pretty choppy waters there in Lake Michigan. Tony Mansour said he was enjoying a day at the beach with family and friends. They were getting ready to pack up and go home. And he said some guy comes running, like asking for a lifeguard. And so he said, why? And he said, there's somebody drowning. So Mansour hopped on his jet ski, got into the water. He said, usually I like going on the jet ski when it's rough, so I already know how to deal with the waves. His friend Murad Karim also joined in. They said he started sprinting towards the break wall to try and get a visual on the person who was in need of help. The waves were 4 to 5 feet high at that point. And so it was very difficult to see the woman floating on the surface. Kareem said Tony couldn't see, and he went in the beginning, went far a little bit. He said, so I told everybody to try to point down together. Maybe it would help. So he said, everybody from the shore trying to just like yell out something, tell her to grab on, but she didn't have any power or physical strength left at that point. But with the navigational aid of the folks on shore, Mansour was ultimately guided in the right direction. He finally spotted her. At that point, another bystander had actually thrown a life preserver towards the woman, but she wasn't able to reach it. Mansour said he yelled at her because she wasn't even responsive at that point. She opened her eyes, and he said he threw his life jacket, or a life jacket, at the woman, who was eventually able to grab onto it and grab onto the life preserver as well. From there, he said he stayed with her for nearly 15 minutes until police arrived. So he was just trying to keep her away from the rocks there on the shore. A rescue swimmer from the Oak Creek Fire Department ultimately reached the two in the water. Kareem said the best moment for me was like, oh, thank God, like somebody who can get her out of here, because he, meaning Mansour, couldn't even pull her. Tony Mansour says, I feel good. She's safe, able to go through her life. The Oak Creek Fire Department says the woman was taken to the hospital for an evaluation. Kareem says he hopes that people will take the dangers of the water seriously, and that he'd like to see more safety measures added to the beach area. Maybe that'll happen, maybe it won't. But Tony Mansour and Murad Karim in the right place at the right time, willing able to help a stranger in need. We thank you for your very, very good deed. And that is going to do it for this edition of Bearing Arms Cam & Company. I want to thank you as well for being a part of the program as always. Looking forward to seeing you back here again tomorrow. Don't forget, by the way, Wednesdays we do our VIP Gold and Platinum live chat with Hot Air's Ed Morrissey at 1:30 Eastern. And I would love for you to be a part of it. It's my favorite hour of the work week, quite honestly. And it's a great conversation each and every week. All you have to do is become a VIP Gold or Platinum member. And the easiest way to do that is to go to bearingarms.com/subscribe. Use the promo code FIGHT, and you can take 60% off your membership. Now, this applies also to your entry-level VIP membership. VIP Gold, and VIP Platinum. 60% off any or all of those when you use the promo code FIGHT. And no matter what tier of support you choose, you'll be supporting the work we're doing at Bearing Arms. And believe me, I really appreciate that. It is critically important. But the benefits accrue, of course, obviously, as you go up from VIP to VIP Gold to VIP Platinum. And one of those benefits, again, getting to hang out with Ed Morrissey and I every Wednesday. I always have a great time. Would love to see you there. Hopefully you have a great rest of your 2A Tuesday. We'll see you back here tomorrow for another edition of Bearing Arms Cam & Company. Until then, be well, be safe, and be free.